Hello, everyone, and welcome to IoT and IP Explained. I am Claudia Tapia, your host and moderator for today's discussion. In this podcast, we bring together leading experts from around the world to explore the fascinating intersection of the Internet of Things and intellectual property rights. Today, we have a particular intriguing case on our hands that has recently been presented to the District Court of Hamburg. It involves the German photographer Robert Kneschke and the organization LAION. For those unfamiliar, LAION, spelled LAION, stands for the Large Scale AI Open Network. It's a German non-profit dedicated to creating and distributing massive data sets that are crucial for training generative AI models. Some popular examples of these AI models include ChatGPT, DALL-E, and Midjourney. This case is especially important and could have significant implications for copyright law, particularly in the context of AI and data mining. We are hoping to clarify two key aspects. First, the scope of the text and data mining exception outlined in Article 4 of the Digital Single Market Directive and its relevance to generative AI. And second, the standards and mechanisms for opting out of such data use. As always, we will break down everything step by step, ensuring that any unfamiliar terminology is clearly explained. I'm thrilled to be joined today by Dr. Maria Daphne Papadopoulou, the acting director of the Hellenic Copyright Organization. Daphne has an impressive background in law drafting, having contributed to many copyright directives and the DSA regulation. She's also a prolific author with numerous contributions to books and articles on these subjects. Daphne, it is a truly honor to have you with us today. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Hi, Claudia. Hi, everyone. The pleasure is all mine. I'm very thrilled to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the nice words. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to discuss about this very intriguing issue, especially from an AI perspective, the opting out of text data mining and not discussing only in theory, but also in praxis, since we have the first European case in the examining the legality of using copyrighted works for the purpose of training generative AI models.
Indeed. But before we dive into this conversation, I would like to share with the audience a little story. I don't know, Daphne, if you remember, but the first time we met a few years ago was at the EIU-PTN conference. And I think it was during the dinner that you explained how you teach copyright to little children. I believe those at kindergarten. And if I recall correctly, you asked the children to draw something they like and to put their names next to the drawings. And then in the break time, you struck through the names and write a different one. And first, I want to know if I still remember the story correctly.
Yeah, it was exactly this. It was not kindergarten, it was elementary school. And actually was one of the way of the teachers that we were engaged in the program and educating students about copyright. They thought about to intrigue their interest about copyright. And really, when they did that, they were furious. The students were furious. But in this way, they are really understand the meaning of respecting copyright. So it was really that we say in practice, not only in theory, they feel in their bones how it is to have their copyright still away from them.
I love your creativity. Excellent way to teach and make a point more, as you said, back to practice. But in this case, that we are going to discuss today, Kneschke versus LAION, we are not talking about drawings, but about a photograph. Can you provide some context to the case?
Yes, of course. But now do you think it's better maybe to start from what is the text data mining, and maybe to give the audience what is the opt-out of text data mining exception, and afterwards to dive in the details of the case?
Why not? Let's do that.
Okay. As you mentioned, the text data mining exception is regulated in Article 4 of DSM Directive, Digital Single Market. Actually, Article 4, that now it's really draws over the attention. It was not at all important back then when we were drafting the DSM Directive, because I was part as representing Greece of this whole the procedure. And so everybody with the focus was on Article 15, Article 17 for the press published rights, for this value gap, and nobody was taking any attention to this text data mining exception. And there was only one text data mining exception for scientific purposes, research purposes, and there were some member states that really they were asking for a general text data mining exception. And after that whole pressure, it was decided that, okay, we will have text data mining exception a general. And that's why it's actually a little bit curious, because first is the specific text data mining exception for scientific research purposes, and afterwards is the general one that somebody would say, why is this like this? It used to be the other way around. Mm-hmm. And it's the other thing is, as was, although by the end, they have cleared all the problematic issues, the final issue that have to be decided among the member states was the character of the Article 4, whether it would be mandatory or optional. Really, this was the final issue that has to be decided. And I think the European legislator would be very happy that finally decided to have a mandatory character, given the fact how important this exception it is. Let's see, closing this parenthesis, because I think it's nice and interesting how to see how the story evolves, and from little articles how much importance it's you can draw. So we have text data mining exception. It's general. Everyone can apply for whatever reason, not scientific. And there is a very big difference between Article 3 and Article 4. Is the opt-out. So Article 4 gives the possibility to the right holder to reserve the rights of reproduction and extraction to their works or subject matter, and so not to apply the exception or limitation, because Article 4 could be exception or limitation. So it gives this possibility to the right holders. So we have an exception, and someone can exercise this text data mining exception, but if the right holder reserve their rights, the user that have lawful access cannot anymore exercise this exception. And what happens? He needs to negotiate to have a license from the right holder in order to perform the text data mining.
I think it's always good to put an example so that people can see what we are talking about. So let's say we have a picture that we have taken, and that picture is being used to train an AI model like ChatGPT. And I have decided I don't want this and I opt out, correct? This means that ChatGPT will not be able to use my picture for their training.
Exactly.
Unless they get an authorization from my side.
Exactly. But the most important thing is how this reservation should be made. The directive give us a hint, because they say it has to be expressly the reservation, and it has to be in an appropriate manner. What does it mean? So we have to dig a little bit in the preamble and also in the article, the text of the article itself. So it says, when you have a publicly available online content, then the only way that's appropriate, it's via machine readable means.
And this means?
This means, okay, again, it's not very helpful, the directive, I'm sorry, the preamble. It tries though tries, because in preamble says that this includes metadata and terms in the website, terms of services, and in the website. So it's not that clear. Actually, tell you the truth. Of course, it says if the content is not available online, it could be a contractual agreement, it could be unilateral declaration. But since we are talking more for AI, this is not of any concern for us. Actually, this is something that it's very crucial. How this is going to be made. And I think all the substance is exactly about this machine readable means of exercising the opting out. And this exactly is the case that we're going to discuss about this. So there are various some protocols, there are some standards, there's this robots TXT it's not something new, and it's something actually that it was used in order to it's like a file name in order to use by the website to indicate which for the web crawlers which portions of the website they are allowed to crawl, and all search engines comply with this protocol. So they said at the beginning, oh, this is something interesting that maybe be applied, but still it's not the case anymore. But there are many standards, many protocols that they are developed towards this direction. The problem is, and now maybe I'm heading a little bit, that probably it will be a nice solution because we have to exercise this opt-out in a big scale. So there has to be a hint, let's say, maybe from the European Commission or from EU IPO or even of the new established AI office to create a list of standards or protocols that will be, let's say, in a way authorized in order to exercise this opt-out in a standard way that's going to be acceptable, and so to have also legal safety.
My suggestion would be now to go to the case so that the audience understands what has been the argument of the plaintiff, what has been the counterargument, which are the key aspects that the court needs to analyze, and what is your expected outcome. That's my favorite part.
Okay. As I said at the beginning, also, it's the first European case to examine the legality of using copyrighted works for the purpose of training generative AI models. So the case is about the LAION. It's a non-profit organization, as you mentioned, that builds widely used training data sets. And an image originated from a German photograph, Mr. Robert Kneschke. So the LAION has used this image in order to feed the data sets that they was creating. The photograph didn't like this and actually started a legal action against the non-profit organization. The LAION has asserted a number of exceptions that actually used as a defense that this action, but because LAION didn't refuse, that didn't use or didn't download the photo, but it asserted that this was it was legal because it exercised within some exceptional limitation. The first one, the exception that he was was claiming in order to apply, was the exception for temporary copying exception of Article 5, Paragraph 1 of Information Society Directive. But the court didn't spend a lot of time, reject it and say there's no temporary copy here. So this exception does not apply. The second exception that was asserting the LAION that applies in this case, and actually the court spent the time analyzing it, or because it's the hearing in front of the court, was exactly this text domain exception of Article 4. It's actually Article 44 in the German copyright law. And there, it seems that the court was inclined to take the position, actually, that indeed making it productions for the purpose of training AI systems falls within the scope of the text-data-mine exception. And this is something that the AI Act itself, in the preamble and not only, mentioning that's actually is making this connection that I was telling you at the beginning before, that if you want to teach generative AI model, then it's very probable that you want to use text-data-mine techniques. But in the AI Act, it said very clearly that if this content that you're going to use, it's copyright protected, then you have to get an authorization of the right holders. And this was considered to be a big win for the right holders and for the creative unit. And say, unless, of course, there are some exceptions that apply. In this case, also, we have text-data-mining exception. But if the right holders have reserved their right and they have opt-out, then again, the providers of general AI models then have again to get the authorization of the right holders, unless, of course, this for scientific research purposes. So here, the German court comes and say, okay, actually, there is this close relationship between the text-data mining and the learning, the machine learning. But the most important aspect was the fact, and actually this is the argument of the plaintiff, of the photographer, that in the website that it was uploaded, it was freely available without a paywall on this his website. Say, okay, but I had in the terms of the services of my website where the picture was there, I have a general notice saying it didn't allow, you say, you can find it in many websites. You may not use any automated programs, applets, bots, or something like this to access the website or the contact for any purpose. And so in this way, the photographer claimed that I have reserved my right, and so I have opted out, and you cannot apply the general text-data-mine exception. But what the LAION asserts, it's one of the arguments, say, indeed, it's a reservation, but is it an appropriate one? Because it has to be inappropriate. Otherwise, actually, it's not, you cannot, if you don't have an appropriate reservation, then actually the exception applies. So it's not appropriate because it's not a machine readable reservation, because it's written in HTML. It's not in a standardized format. So it cannot be read by a machine, which is something that's prerequisite. And actually, all the hearing was turning about this issue. The main part involved around the question of whether this opt-out should be considered machine readable or not. And of course, as we understand, LAION says it cannot be easily understood by crawlers or other ports or by machines. And of course, the photographer said, excuse me, it's readable, it was arguing. And of course, you should take into consideration the facts. The right holders, authors, and the like, they are not have this technical expertise in order to apply this kind of standards and protocols. So I'm sorry, I have already declared my reservation, and I think this should be enough. And I think really this will be, I think, the major part of the decision. That's I think it's expected by the 27th of September, unless another hearing is ordered. So for me, to tell you the truth, if you are asking for my opinion,
yes, I am.
How their outcome, although maybe it sounds a bit unfair for the right holders, for me, I would expect to be decided that is not a machine readable reservation, that is not an appropriate one. Because you have to keep in mind that this is something, it's not something that has to be read by the people. It has to be, it's in a bulk. It has to be a large scale. So it has to be everything automatized in order to have this procedure work. Because although they have a lot of critique against this dexta domain exception, I think the approach is very good actually that we have taken. But in order to be a viable one, in order to be applied in practice and to be an effective one, we have to find the right way in order to apply it uniform in a uniform way. So that's why I propose, not only me, of course, there are some other authors that believe the same, that should be a list actually of these protocols. I think it will be effective for both sides and from the providers of the general purpose AI models, and for the right holders, the creators themselves, because they will know if they will use this kind of standard of protocol, it will be a secure way to reserve their rights. And to this one, I know if I may add, I think it's for paramount importance in order all the system works. It has to do the identifiers of the works. It have to have metadata. We have to have a copyright infrastructure in order to have all this necessary information on the work, on the subject matter, in order all the system to work. Because otherwise, it cannot work. And there are some initiatives towards this direction in order to have this copyright infrastructure. There's a task for copyright infrastructure that has been started by Finland, but it's also adopted by the EU, and there are many member states that are participating to this initiative in order to have this metadata applied in all works and subject matter.
Indeed, I think that if we want to find solutions, we need to have something that works for both sides. And I also see a win-win situation. I wonder, in the meantime, until we get to this point, what are copyright owner associations advocating for? Are they coordinating with each other? Do they have proposals themselves what to do immediately to make sure that we can protect also those who don't have those technical expertise, but they want to be able to opt out?
I think this is a magnificent opportunity for authors, creators, right holders to make coalitions in order to advocate for their rights. Already, probably they have do some lobbying. Also in relation to AI Act. So in the beginning, there were nothing for copyrights. So even these small additions, I think there were small wins, the small victories for authors and right holders and copyright generally creators. But I think it's still a lot to be done. And maybe and hopefully also the collective management organization can help and say maybe and hopefully, because sometimes they are also stuck in some old way of thinking, so they have also themselves to get very up to date and modernized and have all these features in order to get all the value actually and not have this again a new value gap. And I think it's very important, and I think it's in every conference, in every seminar, webinar that they're talking about AI and copyright, one major issue is remuneration. One major issue is remuneration. So it's, but I think they deserve also this. So this is something that it's very maybe boring and tiresome, but you need to have this balance to have also for the right holders and the creators, the content creators, to have a remuneration, but also not to stop the innovation and all the development. So we have to keep a balance, not to be extreme on either sides.
So let's imagine now you are a photographer or an artist in a way with a copyrighted work. What would you recommend to that person? How can they make a proper opt-out?
Oh, for the proper. Okay, this I cannot make a recommendation. I would be liable. No. Listen,
Well, you could say in the theoretical world.
Listen, there are also some studies mentioning all the work that has been done so far. Really, I would use, maybe it's old-fashioned, but it's something that's working. This robots.txt, and there are some other protocols, the spawning, the AI.txt, this text data mining rep. There are ways, but they have to be, for me, sure, machine readable. And I think there is this misunderstanding maybe, because in the preamble of the DSM directive, when it's mentioning machine readable, it says it has to be with machine readable means, it say including the metadata and the website and wherever this reservation is, it has to be in a machine readable way. You can have it in your website. Of course, it's the most obvious way where to put it, but you have to have a machine readable mean. Use a protocol, use a standard in order to be easy to be read by a machine. So in order not to have this kind of, let's say, differences between LAIONs and the photograph Kneschke.
Right. I think that has been helpful, even if it is not a liable advice, please. Thank you so much, Daphne. But before you leave, we have usually a question that I like to raise to anyone I interview, which is, could you share a lesson learned to the audience?
A general lesson from my career life, let's say.
For example.
Okay, I would share a story with you, and you will see the lesson from there. When I started working in the Hellenic Copyright Organization, it's back in 2005. And 1 month after I started working, my director back then, he told me, okay, Daphne, you have to represent the organization. You have to give a speech in front of some librarians in a conference for libraries. And you have to speak about the public lending right from a cooperative view. Okay, I didn't know a lot about the public lending right. I was doing a lot of research and studying and reading. I prepared a perfect paper and not a presentation, oral presentation. I had 15 minutes in my time in order to present my presentation on my paper. And when I was in the 10th minutes and I was always reading my paper, the professor, the president of the panel said, okay, Mrs. Papadopoulou, you have 3 minutes more. I look at him and say, I haven't said even the half of it. He say, what? Your problem. And indeed, he didn't allow me to, let's say, have 50 minutes. I didn't say anything. I was so shocked, but thankfully it was my first time that I gave a presentation. So after that, I changed completely and making very clear the distinction between a written paper and oral presentation. And a final rule, it was an advice from my Dr. Vater, and that he told me, always respect your audience. Be always prepared. And I really, this is an advice that I have in my heart, because it's really also, it was a very nice person. And say, always respect your audience and always be prepared for the audience that you know he is going to listen to you. Because I'm sometimes going to be students of elementary school. So you have to say the things very, very simple and in a very lively way. Okay, always have to be lively, whether it will be students or some experts. Or you have to be to talk in front of colleagues, or there are other copyright experts. So you have to respect them and to give the information that they need, and not just to make something simple and present to me. So this is it.
This is a great advice. I I keep telling my students, the shorter the presentation, the more preparation it requires.
Mm-hmm.
And if someone has decided to spend time with you, it is indeed a sign of respect that you also spend enough time to prepare. So that is worth the time, which is indeed the most valuable thing that we have, our time. And with that, I'd like to thank you again for your time, and also the audience for spending their time with us. As always, comments, welcome. Please feel free to send them to ipwithclaudiatapia@hotmail.com or just in LinkedIn under Claudia-Tapia. And I hope to see you very, very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Claudia. Bye.